Hello, Brett.
Hello, Andy.
Welcome back to the podcast. These things have gone nuts. Well, Brett thinks there's only 4 listeners. I know there's more.
Yeah, it's only because I got 4 friends. Well, 3 friends and my mother. We've been asked to talk about the journey of CCC, and we might as well start at the beginning. And since you're the only one at the real beginning, can you give us a bit of history on how we started?
Yeah, Construction Cost Consultants. I'll tell you firstly how we got the name. I decided when I was a kid, there was a TV advert and it said, it does exactly what it says on the tin. So I decided that Construction Cost Consultants were going to be exactly what it says on the tin. They were going to be Construction Cost Consultants. So that's how we got the name. I was going to call it Quantity Surveyors, but I thought that was a bit much. So that's how I became Construction Cost Consultants. The logo with the chevrons was a design where a friend of mine said it'd be quite cool and sort of show the C's in it would be quite cool. So that's how that happened. I worked for a large corporate construction company before I set up Construction Cost Consultants, and decided that I would go and do something on my own and do it more in initially what I set it up to do was to help subcontractors understand contract, make variations better, make them be able to put variations better to main contractors, which means main contractors would get paid them quicker and everything would happen. It would all flow back into subcontractors because I'd seen that subcontractors just couldn't get the value that they were getting because they didn't have experience enough quantity surveyors, and that's how it initially started. That's what I wanted to do. I had my wee bit of my Superman jacket on and I was like, I'm going to help the industry by doing this. So it did start doing that. And then a few people would come in and say, we get involved with Laytons at where the Highway 1 and Highway 20 met each other. So Laytons asked me to get involved in that at the final claim. So I got involved in that, and that was really one of our first jobs.
So when was that? What year was that? Approximately
2010. So the business is 14 years old, today. This week.
Wow.
So which is pretty cool. So yeah, from there we got involved in a lot of main contractors were bringing us in and trying to help them train their subcontractors and help put us in touch with them, train their QSs as well. So it was me on my own. And I was like a one-man band, which was quite cool. And then the second earthquake happened down in Christchurch, which was the February 1, 2011. And I got a phone call about a week later from a friend of mine who was in one of the PMOs. And he asked if I'd be interested in coming down and have a chat with them. They're looking for QSs to be part of the PMO. That was a main Zealand MWH PMO. And they were doing all Vero's work. So I went down, met them. I went into a room and there was like 10 of them grilling me, which I never expected. And I told them I could do everything and I was great, and I'd be the person sitting there doing the work. I walked out of there and I went downstairs for a cup of tea. There was a wee cafe downstairs and I got a phone call and they told me I had the job. Oh my God. How am I going to get enough QSs to do this? So I phoned every QS I knew in the world and I started bringing them in from all over the world. So that was the start of it. We hadn't done any insurance work before then. I'd done wee bits as a main contractor, as a builder before that, but that was really the start of getting into insurance and doing really what we're doing now, which was telling people what the losses were and what the values were in their properties for construction.
And from what I understand, it grew pretty quick. Like sort of by the time you got them over here, you had sort of lots of boots on the ground.
Yeah, I think at one point we had nearly 40 staff. Within 6 months we were up at 40 staff, 50 staff. It got really big, which was a bit out of control at points, because I ended up moving down to Christchurch and living down there for a couple of years. I was down there most of the time and up here backing up and down, just trying to manage it, because I was trying to manage the PMO as well, because they wanted me to run that and then manage the QSs and show everybody the processes that I brought in.
And for those that don't understand what a PMO is, that is?
Program Management Organisation, I think it is.
Right.
So what happens if there's a big disaster or something goes on? People will team up and they'll come together. MWH, they're called Stantec now, and Mainzeal, who went into liquidation during that period as well. So they got together and became a PMO, a program management business. And then they went to Vero and said, we can do this for you. Yeah. And that's how it all went. And so they got all of Vero's work and they managed, they became partners, they all became. So it was very interesting to what the Americans, a lot of Americans work for MWH, and it was really interesting to work with them and start to understand how they did big catastrophes, because they're used to it. They were used to going in and managing that sort of thing and learning process. That's where I learned process, and that's how I started talking about how a process works. And I learned that process isn't, if you're picking up that glass of water, you're not just picking up the glass of water, you actually talk about the process. I move my hand this way, I grab the water, I lift it up, put the cup to my mouth, I drink the water. That's a process. And that's where I learned that. And I'd never done that before.
Now would be a good time to get back on the topic of how we started.
Sorry. I was just talking about water I needed.
Yeah, that's right. So Christchurch.
Yep. And then it started, I realised probably, it was great. I mean, it was fantastic for us. We were making money. I was making new friends. It was great. And I was learning new systems. Lots of friends all over America. Lots of friends in the insurance industry. We got a bit of a reputation. We had the other big insurance coming to us asking for a system that we had built, because Vero ended up, that PMO ended up winning awards because of what we were doing. And the guy who was running it was a guy called Mark Simister. And he came to me probably 6 months ago, a year ago, and said, the awards that we won for the processes that you brought in were fantastic. And at the time, it was just get the job done. And I just couldn't see the end of it. I couldn't see it. And because there was continual earthquakes going on, it was like, just let's draw the line. Let's draw the line somewhere. Let's draw the line somewhere. And the insurance companies just wanted to know the liability. And at that time, we weren't sum insured. So all the liability sat in with the insurance companies, and they just wanted to know the liability. But every time there was an earthquake, the liability changed.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was scary. I mean, I got caught in, I remember being caught in the toilet, actually, when one of the big earthquakes went off with one of the Vero loss adjusters, which wasn't fun. It was the core of the building where the toilets were. And all the lights went out, everything went off, and we had to bust the door open to get out. There's a story around that.
Yeah, so moving on from that, you were dealing with all the claims through Vero, through this, I guess, JV, I guess.
Yep.
So when did CCC get into the sum insurance?
Sum insured, well, we were doing what we're doing now then, but we were doing it was a process that I had come up with initially. And we were doing it then. I mean, it's 10 times better, 100 times better now than it was then. It was just off the cuff. I had to go through and say, we had builders going out, we had people that own fish and chip shops going out and collecting data for us. And it was coming back, and I was having to put money on it. So I had to write a process that they collected the information that I could actually put money on. And that's how the process thing started. That once we'd got through that, and after a couple of years, I thought, this isn't going to go on forever. And I had built a whole business around doing it. We'd shut down here. We were down there working. I thought, I want a long-term business. It's not just for the terms. There's lots of businesses that started up and made money and stopped at the end of that time. I didn't want to do that. I thought I'd built something that was sustainable. And then the insurance companies and the reinsurers brought in Sum Insured. July 2013. The Sum Insured thing came in, and I went, valuers who I've been working with down in Christchurch have been doing this wrong the whole time, and they're not the people to value a building, how much to build a building. They're good at what they do, which is valuing properties for market sale. They're good at doing rent reviews, things like that. That's their bag, not construction.
Yeah,
and that's when I said, QSs, this is an opening for us to set up a new business and doing that. And that's how we became doing the rebuild valuations. we still have the QS inside, so that's never stopped, and it's always continued to go, and it's been the part that's paid for us to spend the money in and building the technology.
Yeah.
And now the rebuild valuation business is probably 4 or 5 times bigger than the QS business, which is amazing. And that's the value of the technology.
Yeah.
And before we got to anywhere, before we started that side of the business, I got about 4 QSs in our office to price the same job. And I said, at every point, I want you to write down what you think about. And they wrote down every question, and we ended up with thousands of questions. And I said to them, write it all down. There was actually 3 QSs doing it. And I went through and asked them the question of, well, what did you think about it then? What did you think when you done that? And we were just wrote everything down. And that was the very, very, very embryonic part of building the system that we've got now.
And then using those questions and sort of basically bringing some tech. So there was a lot of tech development that took that a lot further. And that's sort of when I got involved with CCC. I was the same as you. I was involved in Christchurch, but I was specialising in the historic buildings. So I was down there to look at all the churches and so forth and try and estimate the cost. And then we started talking, and we were both a bit tired of travelling to Christchurch.
We have known each other for a lot longer.
You would actually, yeah, that's right.
We've known each other for about 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. So Sandy.
Brett was quite young when we first met.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, now I've stayed the same age, but Brett's got older.
But you introduced a lot of tech, which took those initial questions and elevated, and which is sort of where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it sort of shortcuts 10 years.
It's not been an easy 10 years.
No, it hasn't. And a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat and tears. And with trying to meet the market as well, which was probably the hardest thing because valuers had a certain entry-level cost and we had to meet that, and QSs aren't.
Well, let's tell the story around how we got to that point when we had pricing from valuers and everybody kept telling us your price is too high. I think we were about $1,500, $1,750. And nobody would, we had a business and we weren't getting a lot of work, and it came to a point that Brett was working in that part of the business, and I pulled him into the room and I said, Brett, this isn't working. We're not making any money. We need the price to be down about $500, including GST.
So basically reduce the cost and we need to make more money.
Yes.
Mate, just wanted to highlight that.
Oh,
seems like a mission impossible.
Well,
we're still
we didn't have to make more money. We just had to make money. Because we were just throwing money at it, and it just wasn't working. So we actually decided what we were going to pluck out and pull out all the admin side of it, all the stuff that was doubling up, and the pricing side of it as well. We changed that, and that's what started the real development of it. Because both of us wanted it to work.
And then the system became intuitive. I think they call it AI now, but I'm not saying we invented AI. We'll take it. But it did. It became very intuitive, which meant we didn't have to spend so much time on all the admin aspect of it and the QS work. And then we stopped QSs going to site and we had building assessors because there was no point QSs going to site. They needed to use the rates and their knowledge in the system and all the builds at the time and do that in the peer review process.
Now, I think initially it was taking us about 12 and a half hours to do a survey from go to woe, from first call to going out the door. And now it's just over 2 hours it would take us if we actually added it all together and from start to finish.
It can be.
Yeah.
If there's an
that's where we made the savings. That's how we managed to bring it down. And pretty much immediately we dropped the pricing.
Yep.
Down to that price.
And we meet the market now.
From what I hear in the market, we're actually cheaper than everybody else, which is good.
So, Andy, just to summarise, CCC was formed 14 years ago through and gained a lot of traction through the Christchurch earthquake, using a system that was sort of state of the art, but now is very antiquated. Sort of juiced it up a bit with a bit of tech, and 14 years later, we're still here and still talking
Yeah, and growing.
and growing. Yeah.
It didn't start on a bit of tech, it started on a bit of paper.
Yeah.